Like Zoinks! It's Scooby's greatest friends! Not these guys. No. No. Definitely not these guys. Not Scooby's greatest friends. Ruh-ruh. Like Zoinks! It's Scooby's greatest friends! The greatest guest stars and guest mystery solvers to the Scooby-Doo franchise. Obviously, if we're talking about Scooby-Doo's greatest friends, we're talking about Freddie Jones, Daphne Blake, Thelma Dinkley, and his very best friend Shaggy Rogers, Mysteries Inc. Occasionally, Scrappy Doo could be counted as a friendly face. But nope, we are talking about the top 11 guest stars of the Scooby-Doo franchise. The 1 to 2 shot guests who really helped Mystery Inc. to crack a case open. Some backstory. Scooby-Doo was an animation icon starting way back in either 68 or 69. I think it was 68. Anyway, he started the meddling mystery solvers and anthropomorphic sidekick trope. That started with Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The new Scooby movies kicked off an extra trope, a brand new gig, and that was the celebrity guest star. Scooby-Doo's mayhem-causing masked miscreants earned a top 10 list. It's only right that some of his greatest guest stars, in one's humble opinion, earn a top 11. Let's get started. Number 11. Genie. From Scooby-Doo Meets Genie and Babu, Mystery in Persia, the new Scooby movies. Now, there's only one reason I ever looked forward to seeing this episode ever again in reruns. And it's the same reason that Shaggy and Scooby never minded seeing Genie again. I guess that really helped make the episode what it was for me. I also kind of liked the writing on the episode. I mean, we've got Corey and Henry, who are pretty much Shaggy and... No. Corey and Henry, who are pretty much Fred and Shaggy with two different names, respectively. We have the bumbling apprentice Genie Babu, and we have Miss Genie. Yes. Now, pairing off Scooby-Doo with a magical genie was going to be problematic. Masked miscreant. Ponytail wiggle zap. Miscreant unmasked. End credits. Filler scenes of Scooby and Shaggy drooling over Genie. Can you blame them? No. Okay, anyway. Anywho. No, Hanna-Barbera went the extra mile and unleashed a genuine evil djinn on the gang to up the ante and make Mystery in Persia the classic what it was for me. Anyway, number 10. Speed Buggy. Scooby-Doo meets Speed Buggy. The Weird Winds of Winona. The new Scooby movies. The gang end up in the town of Winona, where they meet Speed Buggy and the gang of Tinker, Mark, and Debbie. There is a miserable midnight wind sweeping through Winona? Can Scooby and Speedy crack the case? Scooby-Doo meets Speed Buggy, and Scooby-Doo meets Genie, and a few others that I'm about to mention were crass cross-promotion from Hanna-Barbera. When Scooby-Doo wasn't meeting celebrity guest stars, sometimes using sound-alikes, sometimes with the actual voice act, sometimes with the actual celebrities living to voice their animated counterparts for another day. Well, the other half of the new Scooby movies were him meeting Hanna-Barbera stars. At the time, Hanna-Barbera was working on a cartoon for Genie and Speed Buggy. And there are a couple of other examples I can mention later in the list. But there was always something about the Weird Winds of Winona episode that I always looked forward to seeing the episode in one more rerun, and Speed Buggy makes the list. Now, in the case of this episode, they're not even after a guy in a monster mask. They're after a bunch of guys in weird hoods. Like, the spooky part of this episode was the wind machine that keeps sweeping through Winona. There was just something about the writing on this and the antics between Shaggy and Scooby and Speedy and Tinker that I really enjoyed. Number 9. Miss Melody and, Josie and the Cats. The Haunted Showboat. Scooby-Doo meets Josie and the Gang. The new Scooby movies. The gang head for Mark Twain country and a haunted showboat. They no sooner board the boat than they are greeted by no fewer than 7 shadows running right at them. Now, it's always nice to see Melody and Josie one more time because reasons. And obviously the last time we saw the Pussycats, they were stranded in outer space. So, potato, somehow they're back on Earth now. Anyway, we've got 7 Pussycats, including Sebastian, and 5 members of Mysteries, Inc., because who can forget Scooby-Doo? And the ghost of Captain Scavenger, and the ghost of Injun Joe, and who may or may not be a crooked Mississippi gambler. That is a rather large cast list to keep straight, including because Alexander Cabot and Norval Shaggy Rogers, both voiced by Casey Kasem and both utilizing the exact same mannerisms, let alone same voice, should probably not be talking one after the other and obviously cannot yell simultaneously. So to up the ante of this episode, Alex switches in and out of using Velma's voice by mistake. Still, we have Scooby-Doo teaming up with quite possibly the best example of a Scooby-Doo knockoff in Josie and the Pussycats, and putting those two groups together. It made for a rather enjoyable episode. That's what I thought. Okay. And number 8. Scooby-Doo meets the Three Stooges. We were talking about Ghastly Ghost Town. They met up again in the Ghost of the Red Baron, but we are talking about Ghastly Ghost Town. Number 8, the Three Stooges, from the new Scooby movies, by the way. It was the first episode of the new Scooby movies, so it really kicked off the trope where Scooby was palling around with celebrity guest stars. I never appreciated the Three Stooges episodes when I was growing up the way I should have, but Ghastly Ghost Town did provide us with the single scene between Scooby-Doo and the mechanical gunslinger from the opening credits. And that scene alone saves Ghastly Ghost Town. Plus, again, the Three Stooges were the very first celebrity guests that Scooby palled out with to crack open a case. So one could honestly argue that they set this trope moving and made for a very classic episode in its own right. Number 7, Sherlock Holmes, from the Scooby and Scrappy-Doo show episode of The Night Ghoul of Wonderworld. We are deviating out of the new Scooby movies, if only for a second, to talk about the Scooby and Scrappy-Doo show. The good first season of the show, where they were still using the 22-minute mystery trope, plus the kids were still around. Velma wins a trip to Wonderworld in order to solve a case with Sherlock Holmes. Well, no. Wonderworld, much like Westworld, is filled with mechanical denizens and is more or less a theme park. Velma is off to crack open the case of the Crown Jewels of London alongside a mechanical copy of Sherlock Holmes and not one, but 2 night ghouls running around, only one of whom is actually a robot. As far as the episodes of Scooby and Scrappy-Doo go, this one was my favorite episode. And it turns out that the case surrounding the Crown Jewels of London is an actual case. Sherlock as a guest. He helps the kids for a little bit and then spontaneously malfunctions. So, yeah, they're not very helpful as a guest star, but it was very nice to see that guest trope. It was very nice to imagine the trope of Sherlock Holmes actually helping Scooby-Doo and Velma and the rest of the kids. And yes, Scrappy was around too. Okay, number 6? 6, yes. Number 6. Scooby-Doo meets the Addams Family. Wednesday is Missing. The new Scooby movies. Who exactly were those kooky cast of characters scaring the Scooby snacks out of Scooby and Shaggy during the opening credits to the new Scooby movies? Why, of course, was the Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorne Hall, but you'd have to get the Blu-ray copies of the new Scooby movies to know that, because that particular episode wasn't involved in the DVD release. Oh. Don't mind me. My major gripe with the Blu-ray and DVD releases for the new Scooby movies are that they butchered the opening credits. And they butchered the opening credits because of, one, group of guests. The Addams Family. The Addams Family episode was by far one of the greatest episodes of the new Scooby movies. If only because for this moment, the Addams Family were being voiced by their live screen counterparts and modeled directly after their live screen counterparts, which was the problem with including the Addams Family in these episodes on home media releases due to the retainers for John Aston, Gomez Addams. Well, this was one of the spookier episodes of the new Scooby movies, and creepier and kookier as well, because they are in an actual haunted house with a family of actual spooky denizens. To think that the laughable part of this episode is the monstrous vulture that keeps pestering the Addams Family. Well, some additional backstory. Gomez and Morticia are ready to set off on a second honeymoon to the Okefenokee Swamp, and along come Mystery Inc. as accidental, hapless, haunted housekeepers to look after the family for them. So we get to see Mystery Inc. play off against Fester and Granny and Pugsley and Wednesday and It and Thing and especially Lurch. This was a classic episode, and an episode that certain episodes of the new Scooby movies could only hope to measure up to. Honestly, this is probably one of the best written episodes of the new Scooby movies, the Scooby-Doo meets the Addams Family. Number 5. The Harlem Globetrotters. From the new Scooby movies. From 3, no fewer than 3 episodes of the new Scooby movies. The Harlem Globetrotters. There's not much to say about the episodes in particular. I mean, they were never my favorite episodes surrounding the Globetrotters, but they appeared no fewer than 3 times, which is the most that any celebrity guest star appeared on the new Scooby movies. That makes them iconic, despite my own reservations about them as guests. They definitely must have had their audience, and they definitely made history for the new Scooby movies. In fact, it got to the point where the Globetrotters actually recognized Mystery Inc. around the 3rd time that they met up, when every other guest star always acted like it was the first time they ever saw them, even if it was, for instance, the Three Stooges or Batman and Robin, or Don Knotts, who had met them a couple of times apiece. Anyway, what's next? Number 4. The Hex Girls from What's New Scooby-Doo. They were an all-girl rock band who originally appeared in What's New Scooby-Doo, and eventually were so popular that they made it into a few of the direct-to-video film releases for Scooby-Doo. and are still talked about today. Number 3. Scooby's relatives. This one started with Scooby-Dum on the Scooby-Doo show. Who was either correctly Scooby's cousin or incorrectly Shaggy calls him his brother in the Headless Horseman episode of the Scooby-Doo show. But no, Scooby-Dum was Scooby's cousin. And that started the trope of Scooby's relatives apparently turning up. I mean, occasionally. Scooby's relatives occasionally turning up. We had Scooby D from the second season of the Scooby-Doo show. And that all spiraled into Scooby and Scrappy, his young, doting, daredevil nephew, who not only survived alongside Scooby through the late 70s, but well into the mid-80s, with new episodes surrounding Scrappy. I think there was even one time when they met Scooby's parents at least once. But yeah, Scooby's relatives could either be a help or a hindrance, but were generally pretty welcome to see one more time. I mean, the Scooby-Dum episodes of the Scooby-Doo show were some of the better ones. Number 2. Number 2. The Blue Falcon and Dynamite. Dog Wonder. Oh boy. Back to the Scooby-Doo show. The first season of the Scooby-Doo show broadcasted alongside a partner series called Dynamite. Dog Wonder. The Blue Falcon and Dynamite were very much akin to Batman and Robin. In fact, the villains were so zany it was almost like the 1966 live-action Batman series in animated form. The Blue Falcon was a crime-fighting, hapless superhero voiced by Gary Owens. Space Ghosts, Gary Owens. Dynamite was his bumbling, mechanical, canine sidekick, voiced by who else? Scooby-Doo's very own Don Messick. There were 16 episodes of Blue Falcon and Dynamite that were broadcast alongside Season 1 of the Scooby-Doo show. And those were the episodes that were released on DVD. There were 3 extra Season 2 episodes of Blue Falcon and Dynamite that aired alongside Laugh Olympics, and they have yet to see a home media release. Anyway, throughout Blue Falcon and Dynamite's adventures, they would occasionally meet Mystery Inc. in crossover episodes, as if a Season 1 episode of Scooby-Doo show hadn't just gone off the air. Now they could appear in the second half as well. Nowhere to Hide, or whatever they called the first episode, The Ghost of Mr. Hyde. Okay, not even the ghost. Hyde was supposed to be a creature. He wasn't even a ghost. He was a criminal. Everybody Hyde, that's right. The very first episode of Blue Falcon and Dynamite was Everybody Hyde, and they met up with Scooby-Doo and the gang. Later, they would meet up against Swamp Rat and in The Wizard of Ooze. And I'm sure there were a couple more instances of these team-ups. But they were always fun to see one more time. Scooby-Doo and Dynamite on the same screen. How their antics played off one another really well. So it was always fun to see one more time. So, that was numbers 11 through 2 for Scooby's greatest guest stars. Honorable mentions. Jerry Reed from the new Scooby movies, The Phantom of the Country Music Hall. Great episode. Definitely in my top 5 favorites for the new Scooby movies. But they didn't meet Jerry Reed face to face until almost halfway into the episode. It had to be 25 minutes into a 40 some odd minute episode before they met Jerry Reed face to face, because he had spent the entire episode locked up. Everything else about the episode was just... I can't even begin to describe why I enjoyed that episode as much as I did. But it ranks right up there with The Haunted Showboat, or Mystery in Persia, or the Addams Family episode, or a couple of other episodes that I could mention for how great it was in the writing. Which brings us to Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. To this day, Hanna-Barbera, or it's Warner Brothers by now, is trying to recreate the success of the new Scooby movies by continuing on and on with the guest star trope. Sometimes it works better than others. I did enjoy the Steve Urkel episode of Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. I enjoyed their adventure with the Funky Phantom Kids. Again, that's from Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. Which brings us to number 1. Let us put our hands together for a dynamic duo, a pair of very super friends. A caped crusader and a boy wonder, if you will. Number 1. Greatest guest stars, greatest guest friends for Scooby and the gang. Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin. Voiced respectively by Olan Soleil and Casey Kasem at the time. From the new Scooby movies, from the dynamic duo affair and the Caped Crusader caper. The dynamic Scooby-Doo affair, and the Caped Crusader caper. These episodes were classic crossovers. And again, at the time, Hanna-Barbera was getting ready to create the Super Friends, so Batman and Robin were cross-promoting it. Now, these episodes were legendary. Not only because of the dynamic duo coming to town, because if that were the only case, Scooby-Doo's after a guy in a monster mask, Batman and Robin throw their batarangs, guy in monster mask is tripped up, grand unmasking, end credits. The dynamic duo did not show up alone for these episodes. The Joker and the Penguin were always on hand for a cameo appearance in the dynamic Scooby-Doo affair, or for the entire episode of the Caped Crusader caper. that just helped me make these episodes as great as they were for me. And it was always fun to play off the meddling mystery solvers against a pair of caped crime fighters and their subsequent kooky criminals in the forms of the clown prince of crime and the pudgy purveyor of perfidy. Well, that's it. My top 11 list of Scooby's greatest guest stars to complement the list of the top 10 greatest monsters. We can agree to disagree. You can say, hey, you barely used any actual celebrities, like Dick Van Dyke, or Don Knotts, or Mama Cass, or Sonny and Cher, who actually voiced their own cartoon crossovers. And I'm sure Don Knotts did the same, as did Dick Van Dyke. There's plenty of room for healthy debate. This was not an official list. If it were an official list of the greatest guest stars, Genie and Speed Buggy probably wouldn't have made the cut in return for, say, Don Knotts or Jonathan Winters. This was my list, my picks. Feel free to hit the comment section with your own responses. Thanks. Have a spooky Scooby month.